Nancy Pheasant, a storyteller and member of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, told the Cherokee story of Medicine Lake to a group of area students at Kuwohi in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park on the morning of Tuesday, September 9th, as part of the annual Kuwohi Connection Days event.
Yanagad, Nashi Tandisti Dagado, Wyohi de Guaynasha E, Zalagi, North Carolina. Hello everyone, my name is Nancy Pheasant. I live in the Wolftown community located on the Qualla boundary in Cherokee, North Carolina. There's a reason we're here this morning. I want to explain to you just a little bit and tell you a story, a Cherokee story, about this land that we are sitting on today. You see this place where we stand and we sit this morning is very sacred to the Cherokee people. My grandparents told this story, my father told this story, and as a storyteller, I'm here today to share the story with you. But the story that I'd like to share with you is about a lake. When you look out across the mountains, you see the mountain tops, but then you also see a lot of fog or mist. A long time ago, there was a legendary medicine lake that was associated with this mountain. It is hidden from us today, and as the story goes on, I'll explain why. A long time ago, there was a young hunter that had left his village to go on a hunt. And this particular day, as he was walking along the path, he saw all the different paw prints along the path, but he didn't see any animals. There was no deer, there was no elk, there was no bear or turkey. There wasn't even a rabbit that crossed his path. And he was getting very saddened and despondent, and he thought that he would not be successful in his hunt that day. And he almost turned around to go home. But as he was contemplating continuing on the path and continuing on his hunt, he heard something really quiet. It sounded like footprints in the near distant forest. And he stopped and he waited and he watched. And there was this little bear cub that came up and stood on the trail in front of him. And he stayed really still and really quiet because he didn't want to scare the bear. This was such a young cub that he started to look around. What do you think he was looking for? Mama bear. You see a little baby cub bear? Be very cautious and look around, because if there's a baby bear somewhere, mama bear is sure to be around. And you don't want to have to mess with mama bear. Same thing with the young hunter. He kind of stepped back and hid himself from view, and he watched the little cub. But he noticed something about the cub. You see, it was hurt and it was injured. And he watched the cub. It would walk a few feet, limp, and then stop and sit down. And he kept watching the little bear cub, and it kept doing the same thing. Took a few steps and stopped and sat down. And he got really worried. He knew that if he left the little bear alone, that it wouldn't survive on its own. So he decided to continue to watch the bear. And as he did this, it started to get late in the day. And he knew in order to get back to his village in time, he'd have to leave right then. But he didn't want to leave the baby bear. He didn't want to take it with him, because when you take a wild creature from its homeland, it will not survive. So he decided he would wait and watch the bear. Before too long, the bear found a place to bed down. Found a big pine tree, and at the base of that tree, snuggled himself in and went to sleep. And the young hunter fell asleep too. Right before daybreak, just as the sun was coming over the ridge, he heard the little bear start moving around. And he watched the baby bear cub stand up and shake itself off and start walking up the trail again. All of a sudden, it left the trail and went down the embankment. Well, it lost its footing because it had a hurt paw. And it started rolling down the mountainside. And when it came to a stop at the end, the hunter followed. And he watched the bear walk to the edge of a beautiful lake. The water was so clear you could see all the way to the bottom. And it had a beautiful blue color to it. What was interesting is the hunter stood and watched the bear. He realized that they weren't alone. You see, all around the edge of the lake, there were other animals of all sizes, big and small. There were big bears, big elk, deer, wolves, foxes, rabbits, squirrels, all the way down to the tiniest little field mice. And he watched the bear cub as it entered into the water, and all the other animals walked into the water and started swimming in big circles around the lake. But he noticed something about all the animals. They were either sick or hurt and injured. And as they swam around in a counterclockwise motion, they swam for 7 laps around that big lake. On the 7th circle, they came out of the water. And as they stepped forward, they no longer was sick. They no longer were hurt. You see, this was the medicine lake that the Cherokees have spoke of for generations. The lake is hidden to us today. Comes the question as to why. At one time, it was available to the Cherokee people and all humans, regardless of who they were, where they came from. But because man was no longer in balance with nature around him, because man no longer cared about the plants and the animals, because man no longer cared about pollution and keeping our air and our water clean, the lake became invisible to man. They say, hopefully in the near future, that one day we will have access to Medicine Lake once again. But before that can happen, we have to become back into balance, not only with ourselves and each other, but also with the plants and the animals and nature itself. I tell you this story today because I want you to understand that it is our responsibility as people, especially for you as young people, to care about the planet, to care about the air that we breathe, the water we drink, and the ground that we walk on. And maybe one day we will also have access to the Medicine Lake.